Hello, fellow YouTubers. This is a video I've wanted to make for a while in relation to not so much the generation gap, but as you can see in the, or is it over there? Yeah, it's over there. The generation war, almost. What I've noticed for a number of years is that either being a part of it or not being a part of it, what I've noticed, is that there seems to be every time the next generation is trying to make necessary steps to take leadership, the generation that precedes it normally takes it upon itself to kind of halt that effort for any number of reasons. The main reason that I'm running into with the generation before mine is you're not ready, and we're grooming you to be ready, but you're not ready yet. Now, there are two fundamental problems with that. Not just fundamental problems I have, but just general fundamental problems. First being that the generation that comes before this current generation, Generation X and Y, the baby boomer generation, can't really mold Generation X and Y into their image for the future, because our future is going to be different than their future. Mainly due to the fact that we, the Generation Xers and the Generation Y folks, are doing, are making a conceded effort to, make the best out of our current situations and our future. And when the previous generation halts that effort by saying, you're not ready, and you're the future, you're not the present, it is kind of impeding. And that's the second point. In that, you can't really, to impede a process such as taking over the way the future is going to be handled, to kind of impede that process really doesn't help the process. Now, one can say, from baby boomer generation can say, oh, well, we're not really impeding the process so much as we are trying to put up roadblocks to see if these challenges that we're throwing out can be met. But part of the difficulty is when the baby boomer generation, who approach situations differently than the generation that came before them, gave them, instruction and impedance and everything in that regard, and challenges and everything like that, the way they approach their challenges were different than the way we're approaching the challenges. And the reason for that, obviously, is because each generation approaches situations differently. And I think that's that's also part of the problem, is that every generation, since we approach challenges differently, that kind of affects generation war. But again, just going back to my original point, you can't impede the process as a generation, because whether or not the generation as a whole wants to believe it or not, and I'm not talking about my generation, Generation X and Y, I'm talking about the generation before mine, the baby boomer generation. But if the baby boomer generation wants to continually tell my generation, well, we're not ready to give you power yet, because this, that, and the other. Again, it impedes the process that needs to affect the future. Because again, it's not the baby boomer future that will be the future. It is the Generation X and Y future that's going to be the future. Unfortunately, I'm not saying that the baby boomers are going to be phased out, but there are so many reports that are going on in every news facet that are saying that the baby boomer generation is the generation that's retiring right now in massive numbers. And it's the Generation X and Y that is, kind of taking over those new jobs. And while a lot of the baby boom generations aren't really, ready to release the reins on a lot of their executive positions and things like that, again, it doesn't help. All of this doesn't help the process at all. That's the general point I'm trying to make. And I'm not trying to harp on one generation and say, it's all your fault. I personally haven't done anything for my future, because I have gotten the degrees. I do have an excellent career, not a job, a career. And I make my own wages. I'm extremely independent, and I make my life as enjoyable as I can. So I'm not saying, as a personal gripe against me, that the generation that preceded mine, is affecting my future. What I am saying is that for a generation of the past to impede the generation of the future doesn't help the primordial, doesn't affect the future at all. It does affect the future in that it will impede the future from happening in a positive light. Whether it's running the country, whether it's running countries or running businesses or running religious sects or whatever, it all has an adverse effect. And yeah, I want to see what I want to make the video pretty short because I wanted to see what other people thought, because I do have a lot of, being that my videos do affect a lot of different people, and a lot of people, different age ranges do subscribe. I have a lot of people from the Generation X and Y generation, probably a lot younger than that too. I don't know what the next generation after that is, but what they're called. But I guess they're the internet generation after that. But I have a lot of baby boomers subscribe to me. I don't know if I have a lot of people that are before the baby boomer generation that have subscribed to me. I don't know. If I do, so be it. But yeah, I want to start a dialogue with this topic in mind. Just a generation clash and things like that, and just see what people's thoughts are. See if if you agree with me, if you don't. I want to hear what your thoughts are. I try to make these videos to try to incite some sort of dialogue between different people. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But I think this kind of dialogue needs to happen. Because maybe if it does, then I think the future can be affected, and I think it can be affected positively. So yeah, reply to this video either with a video response or a comment, a respectable comment, because those porn bot comments are getting a little bit annoying to block them and everything like that. So respectable comments, and again, this is a dialogue starter, so let's start some dialogue, people.